actual debate itself, because, boy, was it an interesting one. It started out with fireworks last night, and we're watching this, and I'm just laughing. It was like a kind of like a 12-round fight. This is Elizabeth Warren coming right out of the gates going after Mike Bloomberg. Now, as you know, Mike Bloomberg, this was the first time he was on a stage and the first time I've ever seen him in a debate before. So this was a big moment for Michael Bloomberg. And I want you to listen to Elizabeth Warren. Again, this is within a minute of the debate starting, going after Bloomberg. Have a listen to this. Are we having problems?
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg.
Okay, so that's how the debate started. Apparently, Mayor Bloomberg has made those comments in the past, and he didn't deny them. If this is a man that's going to be running for the president of the United States, if you're a Democrat and you hear those things, I'm not sure how you can support a guy like that when you go after Donald Trump for the evil things that he says on a daily basis. But it didn't end there with Elizabeth Warren. And by the way, she was aggressive the whole night. Mayor Pete also got on the bandwagon of attacking Michael Bloomberg. Keep in mind, in the national polls, the recent ones that were out, Bloomberg 19%. A lot of people think he's buying the election because of all the money he spent, $400 million. So this is Mayor Pete now on the attack of Michael Bloomberg.
Let's put forward somebody who actually lives and works in a middle-class neighborhood in an industrial Midwestern city. Let's put forward somebody who's actually a Democrat.
So basically, a lot of people say Bernie Sanders isn't a Democrat. Now they're saying Bloomberg isn't a Democrat. And Bloomberg's just kind of standing there with this weird look on his face. Didn't do a good job defending himself. And this is where it got really interesting last night in Vegas. Elizabeth Warren now attacking Bloomberg over these non-disclosure agreements. Apparently, he said some inappropriate things and done some inappropriate things to a number of different women, and he's paid them off to keep their mouth shut. Sound like somebody else? Yeah. So this is Elizabeth Warren going at it with him about this.
Exactly the same as men.
And I hope you heard what his defense was. I've been nice to some women. Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements so we can hear their side of the story?
I mean, she was really nailing Bloomberg on this. Listen, if you're going to be the president of the United States, you better not have these types of skeletons in your closet. This is, Bloomberg has a lot of similar qualities to Donald Trump. I'm telling you right now.
Except he's actually less likable than Donald Trump. He has less charisma.
Well, listen, it depends on who you talk to. I think they're both very similar and in the same boat. But Bernie Sanders and Bloomberg went at it with each other, and it wasn't about non-disclosure agreements. It wasn't about the horrific things that Bloomberg has said about women, and it wasn't even about stop and frisk. And they did bring that up, by the way. This was about wealth. And again, this was where Bloomberg made a really good point because, Bernie Sanders is the guy who talks all about, spreading the wealth to all. And then they're talking about the homes they own and this sort of thing. So listen to this. This is Bernie Sanders and Bloomberg talking about going over wealth with one another, sparring.
Democratic socialism for working people, not billionaires.
What a wonderful country we have. The best-known socialist in the country happens to be a millionaire with 3 houses. What I miss here?
Well, you'll miss that I work in Washington, House 1.
That's the first problem.
Live in Burlington, House 2.
That's good.
And like thousands of other Vermonters, I do have a summer camp. Forgive me for that. Where is your home? Which tax haven do you have your home?
New York City, thank you very much. And I pay all my taxes. And I'm happy to do it because I get something for it.
Okay, that was the best moment for Michael Bloomberg in the entire debate yesterday. And he makes a really good point. Listen, if Bernie Sanders is talking about spreading the wealth, well, this is a man that's a millionaire himself, and he owns 3 homes. So it's difficult for Bernie to defend that.
He's also 83 years old.
Yeah.
So he could become a millionaire by saving $40,000 or $20,000 a year over 80. I mean, it'd be different if he was 45 or 50 years old. I think that Michael Bloomberg is the wrong person, considering he's worth $65 billion himself, to go after Bernie Sanders. And I have no problem with Bernie Sanders owning 3 houses, to be completely honest with you.
I want to just talk about some breaking news, and then we'll get back to the debate here. Breaking news, as I said, Roger Stone, the sentencing was just going to come down. He was just sentenced to 40 months in prison. This just came down. He could have been sentenced to 40 years in prison. I still think Donald Trump is going to pardon him, but that's the sentencing 40 months behind bars. So we'll see if that holds up or if Donald Trump will pardon him, which I would imagine he will. Getting back to the debate, and we'll continue to monitor that story, by the way. Getting back to the debate, Bernie Sanders and Mayor Pete going at it over donations. Now, keep in mind that Bernie Sanders is the front runner now in the Democratic Party. So now they're going to go after him. Yes, they did go after Bloomberg, but they also went after Bernie Sanders. And so this is Bernie and Pete going at it with one another about donations to the campaign. Have a listen to this.
So what we are saying, Pete, is maybe it's a time for the working class of this country to have a little bit of power in Washington rather than your billionaire campaign contributors.
Now, see, I have a problem with that because Pete Buttigieg would not be able to be on that stage if he didn't have those contributions. And by the way, Buttigieg has hundreds of thousands of people donating to his campaign. Is it his fault that under 50 of them happen to have a lot of money? I have a problem with Bernie Sanders doing that. Pete Buttigieg hasn't done anything wrong. If somebody wants to donate boatloads of money to your campaign, what do you say? No, you're a billionaire. I don't want it. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. I don't like that argument by Bernie Sanders. Pete Buttigieg has done nothing wrong there. So Elizabeth,
and I believe their donations are actually capped at a specific number.
Well, even if they're not capped, if somebody wants to donate to a campaign, there's no law that says they can't do it. I don't care how much money they have. If Sheldon Adelson says, I want to donate $100 million to the Donald Trump 2020 campaign, he has the right to do that. And I would never tell Donald Trump, no, you can't accept it. The laws are, they're not being broken here. I don't understand. You know what I mean? I don't understand Bernie Sanders and his take on that. It just makes no sense to me. So Elizabeth Warren decided to attack a bunch of candidates on their health care plans. And this was a big part of the debate yesterday. So here's Elizabeth Warren talking about this.
Mayor Buttigieg really has a slogan that was thought up by his consultants to paper over a thin version of a plan that would leave millions of people unable to afford their health care. It's not a plan, it's a PowerPoint. And Amy's plan is even less. It's like a Post-it note, insert plan here.
That was pretty funny. By the way, I thought Warren was the big winner last night. We'll go over that in a little bit, but I got one more cut I want to play for you, and this is my favorite part of the debate. My favorite part of the debate last night was when Amy Klobuchar was criticized for not knowing who the president of Mexico is. And the one person on that stage who I think was right, that basically attacked her for it, was Pete Buttigieg. But Pete and Amy got into it on multiple occasions last night, and it was very entertaining. Here's one of those clips.
But you're staking your candidacy on your Washington experience. You're on the committee that oversees border security. You're on the committee that does trade. You're literally in part of the committee that's overseeing these things. And we're not able to speak to literally the first thing about the politics of the country to ourselves.
Are you trying to say that I'm dumb, or are you mocking me here, Pete?
I'm saying that you shouldn't trivialize
I made
that
an
knowledge.
error. People sometimes forget names. He's basically saying that I don't have the experience to be president of the United States. I have passed over 100 bills as the lead Democrat since being in the U.S. Senate. I am the one, not you, that has won statewide in congressional district after congressional district.
Okay, first of all, Pete is a mayor, number one. Number two, just because he's a mayor doesn't mean he's not fit to be president. Number three, if she can't handle a little bit of criticism, and by the way, this was the first time she was really hit because that was a blunder. I remember when Sarah Palin was running with John McCain for vice president, and Sarah Palin was asked, well, what books do you read? And she couldn't name one. She sounded like a moron. And yes, if you're a senator, we're not talking about some obscure country, right? That would be a different scenario, right? Or, if they said, well, who's the president of Finland? If she didn't know the answer to that, she deserves a pass. But we're talking about Mexico. We're talking about border security every day, and we're going to get more into that in the next hour. We're talking about trade. There's so many things that we are dealing with when it comes to Mexico, and Klobuchar is a big part of that. And the fact that not only could she not name the president of Mexico, but then when she was asked about it in the debate last night, she had to look down at her paper to pronounce his name right and look at his name. It is completely fair to go after her for that. And her response was going on the major defensive. She was convulsing. It looked like she was having a seizure, That's really what she looked like last night.
It doesn't change the fact that she is a senator who's passed over 100 bills, and Pete Buttigieg is the mayor or was the mayor of a city of 50,000 people. Just to give you an example of what that means.
Yeah.
And I think that does make him unfit to be president for a number of reasons. But Pahrump has 37,000 people, Brian. Do you think?
But you agree with me?
Do you think the mayor of Pahrump is fit to be president of the United States?
I don't know anything about the mayor of Pahrump, so I couldn't answer that question. What I do know is that Pete Buttigieg is extremely intelligent. He's extremely well-spoken. He's extremely polished. He has done a lot of good things in life. Oh, yeah, and by the way, he also served this country honorably. So I don't know anything about the mayor of Pahrump. Forgive me. What I do know is that Buttigieg is he's a hero as far as I'm concerned, and he's a good man. Now, does he have the experience of a Klobuchar? No. That doesn't mean he's not a better candidate. I think he is. And I'm going to tell you, for lack of a better term, and this might gross some people out, Klobuchar, she was shaking so much when she was being attacked. She looked like me when I reach orgasm, JD. I just wanted to put that image in your head.
And that was really necessary.
She was shaking and convulsing.
Thanks for that, Brian.
No problem.
I really, really appreciate it.
You've seen me in that state before. It's called the Vegas take on a Friday night. No, in all seriousness, Klobuchar looked ridiculous last night. She got extremely defensive. And here's my point. If she can't take a little bit of criticism for screwing up and not knowing who the president of Mexico is, you think she's going to be able to sit next to Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un? Do you think she's going to be able to deal with criticism from other world leaders when she can't even take a little bit of criticism on a debate stage in the Democratic debate? I'm sorry, folks. If you're a Klobuchar fan, I want to know why you still support her. Now, I understand she's a moderate, but the way she behaved last night, and then she was whining and complaining after the debate, saying this was a horrible debate for the Democratic Party. No, it wasn't. I actually thought it was a pretty good debate. Yeah, it would have been better if they talked a little bit more about Donald Trump and the impeachment process. It would have been better probably if they talked a little bit more about immigration policy and gun control. They didn't get into a lot of stuff, but I think we learned about temperament, and I think that's very, very important. I think we learned a couple things. Who are the losers and the winners in this debate? Well, let's start with Michael Bloomberg. Big loser. Huge loser. He's going to throw a couple $100 million now more on advertising to try to get people to forget about what took place last night. You're telling me that Bloomberg has a chance to defeat Donald Trump when he couldn't even handle the criticism last night? One thing I will say about Donald Trump, the man knows how to debate. He's really good up there on a stage. He's a showman, and Bloomberg looked like a fool last night. He looked like a scared little fool. Besides the fact of the horrible things that he said about women and the non-disclosure agreements, he looked like a fool on that stage, and Elizabeth Warren took him to school.
So how did Joe Biden do, Brian?
Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah, I'll get to that. But Bloomberg, the losers are Bloomberg and Klobuchar, in my opinion. No question. Bloomberg was terrible last night. He's done. In my opinion, he's done. That's it. It's over for Bloomberg. He wasted a bunch of money. It's over. And the reason why I say Klobuchar looked really bad last night, because she was attacked a little bit, and she did not handle it well. She did not handle it well. Now, who are the winners, and who do I think did okay? Let's start with Joe Biden, with your question about Joe Biden. I didn't think he had a bad debate. I didn't think he had a great debate. I think he kept the level playing field. The comment, JD, he made when they were talking about the Mexican president, I thought that was pretty funny. He had some good one-liners. He's like, I'm the only person that knows the guy. I'm the only person that met the guy, which is kind of true. That's kind of his saying in these debates, where I'm the only person that actually passed this type of legislation.
Right.
So,
I have the high-level experience required of the president of the United States. Which he definitely does.
So I thought he did okay. I don't think it hurt or helped him. It might have helped him because Bloomberg was in the news, and I think he's going to drop off, and I think Klobuchar is going to drop off. I really do. Bernie Sanders got a lot of airtime yesterday. He made himself sound like he's not a Democrat. Like that last caller who called in, I agree with her. He's really not a Democrat.
He's a socialist.
Yeah, he really is. And America,
he is absolutely a socialist.
In my opinion, America doesn't need a socialist. Now, I thought Buttigieg, just like Biden, did fine. I thought he had a decent debate. It was okay. To me, the big winner last night was Elizabeth Warren, because she was extremely vocal. She got more time than anyone else, I believe, when she was talking. And she went on the attack. And I think she's a little bit desperate. She's not doing well in the polls. It would not surprise me, JD, if she actually took the place of Klobuchar in the polls, because I think she did that well. I really do. And by the way, she did defend Klobuchar in that exchange with Buttigieg. I didn't agree with her there. But if you're asking me who the winners and losers are, that's what I took away from last night. I really did. I think the person that hurt themselves the most is Bloomberg. Everybody, this was his time to shine. He had to have a good debate last night.
And see, I would argue that the person who hurt themselves the most was Klobuchar, because she doesn't have the money Bloomberg has. Bloomberg, like you said, can technically bounce back from this because he can put so much money behind his campaign.
And I understand.
He has so many connections. Klobuchar is just a senator from Minnesota.
And I understand what you're saying.
She needed to handle herself professionally on the biggest platform of her life.
I understand your point.
In order
I get what you're
to
saying.
be in this conversation.
I get what you're saying. I understand your point, but here's what I'm saying. I don't think any reasonable person truly believed, even a week ago, that Klobuchar was going to be the person to win the nomination. But I also believe many Democrats thought that if Bloomberg had a good debate last night, it was a done deal. He was going to win because of the money he has. Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand. So when is the next debate?
I have to look that up. I'm not sure. But what I do know is this hurt Klobuchar and Bloomberg. There's no question about it. We can argue or debate, who it hurt more. But keep in mind, JD, Bloomberg had 19%. 19% in the polls. He was number 2 in the polls. And he'd never even been on a debate stage before. He was hammered. He was hammered on the fact that when he was mayor, he did not support raising minimum wage. He was hammered on his non-disclosures and some of the horrible things he said about women. He was hammered on the fact that, he's not really a guy who's for middle-class America, and he was absolutely hammered on the stop and frisk. Now, there was a moment when they talked about stop and frisk, JD, and Elizabeth Warren said, your apology's not good enough. I'm paraphrasing here. But, he gave like a half-hearted apology, and he wants to move on. That was a racist, make no mistake about it, stop and frisk was a racist policy. And then Joe Biden even got involved in that conversation. And Joe Biden said, I sent our people down there when I was vice president with Barack Obama. We sent people out there to monitor it, and you still didn't back down on the policy. So the fact that Bloomberg is apologizing now is crap. It's a half-hearted apology. It's too little too late. I think it speaks volumes on the person that Michael Bloomberg is. And nobody should ever buy their way into the White House. And that appears that what Mike Bloomberg is trying to do. It's not going to work. You have to be good on the debate stage. One thing, one positive thing I'll say about Donald Trump, and you can't take this away from him, he was very good in the debates.
Well, and part of the argument was that Donald Trump did buy himself into the White House like Ross Perot tried to do, but Donald Trump actually marketed himself into the White House, and Michael Bloomberg is just incapable of that. And also, after Bloomberg's horrendous performance, Donald Trump actually went on Twitter and said this might have been the worst performance in Democratic debate history.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but it was very bad.
When he was discussing Michael Bloomberg.
I can tell you,
Trump has already capitalized on it.
I can tell you right now it wasn't very good. And I'll also say if that was Donald Trump in the shoes of Mike Bloomberg, I remember when Megyn Kelly went after Donald Trump in the debates in 2016. It was one of the Republican debates. And remember when she said, you've said these things about women, you've said those things about women. And what does Donald Trump say? He says, no, that's not true. Who is the comedian that he JD, help me out here. Who was the comedian that Trump was talking about that he got into it with? I keep forgetting her name. She was in A League of Their Own. I'm forgetting her name.
You talking Kathy Lee Griffin?
No, I'm not talking. I was hoping you could help me out on this one. I'm drawing a blank here. Rosie O'Donnell.
Rosie O'Donnell. Okay,
yeah, Rosie O'Donnell. But remember when Megyn Kelly was rolling off all these horrible things Donald Trump has said about women, and he said a lot of horrible things about women, and his response was, that's not true. I was only talking about Rosie O'Donnell. So he deflects. He makes a joke, and everybody laughs because it's funny, and it takes away from the horrible things that he said.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, later on, a week later, he said, blood coming out of her eyes or ears or wherever. Completely inappropriate statement. But that's just a perfect example. Bloomberg is not capable of doing that. He's not quick on his feet. He's certainly not funny. He doesn't have much of a personality. And like Donald Trump, Bloomberg has said some horrible things about people, and his defense was, I've been nice to some women, which is a horrible defense. And then he went on to say, listen, in these non-disclosure agreements, I've said some jokes that maybe some people didn't like. That's not a good defense either. He did a horrible job defending himself, and like I said, that's why I think he is the biggest loser here. I don't think anybody reasonably would think that Klobuchar was going to be the front runner of the Democratic Party. I understand that she had a little bit of a surge. That's done now. I'm sorry. She was literally convulsing. I'm telling you, she was convulsing. It's crazy. She really was. It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. By the way, the next debate I just found out is February 25th. So that is coming up. It's coming up real soon. So we'll certainly follow that debate.
That's in 2 days, Brian.
Yeah. February 25th. So that'll be
5 days. I'm sorry, 5 days.
5 days away. Yeah, it's the 20th today. That's after. They're not going to have two debates in Nevada, but they had one. It was last night. It was very entertaining. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun to watch. And listen, Elizabeth Warren was the aggressor. And what we've learned in these debates is the person who is more aggressive, who's interrupting, the person who's constantly putting her hands up, wanting to talk. Elizabeth Warren was doing that all night. Usually it's the person that is the aggressor like Donald Trump did in 2016, usually that's the person that's going to win. So we got to take a break now. We got to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking to a group called Races. Now, why are we having them on? Well, 2 members of that group disturbed and interrupted the debate last night while Joe Biden was speaking. Why did they do it? What were they trying to accomplish? We're going to talk to them coming up next. You're listening to The Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDON.